Good morning, everybody. This is Ed Avis. I'm the Managing Director of APDSP. I'm happy to have all of you join us in our webinar today. Before I introduce today's panelists, I'd like to remind everybody that our annual convention is approaching. It's October 25 and 26 in Dallas, which is the same week as Print United, the RSA meeting, and the ReproMax meeting. So it's a great week to be in Dallas, and we're expecting an outstanding crowd. The focus of our convention will be transitions, and the speakers will talk about improving the value of your business in preparation for either selling it or handing it to the next generation or to employee ownership. So that's a topic that I think everyone probably has some interest in. If you would like more info about our convention, please go to our website, apdsp.org. Okay, well, we have an outstanding webinar planned for you today about 3D scanning. And the four panelists who we have with us are probably among the most knowledgeable people in this field. So you're going to hear from the true experts today. They will discuss the basics of the field, what the opportunities are for reprographics businesses, and some important advice on how to enter that field. They each have a little different angle on the market, so they will each have a presentation that they will speak sequentially. If you have questions during the presentations, you are definitely encouraged to ask them. Please use the questions tab on your GoToWebinar panel. If you don't see that tab, click on the little orange arrow near the top right of your screen, and that should open up the tabs for you. But we will answer the questions at the end of the webinar. So please go ahead and send them in whenever they occur to you, and then we will ask them at the end to the appropriate person. So let me briefly introduce our panelists, and then we'll jump in. Keith Cox is the National Account Manager for technology provider Synnex, and someone who is very familiar with this topic. I want to mention that if you want to even deeper dive into 3D scanning, Keith is holding a seminar on this topic October 23rd in Dallas, the same hotel as our convention. It's October 23rd from 8 till 1. If you'd like more information on that, you can call or email Keith, and he'll give you his contact info when he speaks. Our second presenter is Joe Nicoli. He's the manager of AEC Services for Direct Dimensions, which is a firm that offers 3D scanning and digitizing and digital modeling. And then our third presentation will be a joint presentation by Nina DiCarlo and Lucas Durrutia, both of them from DiCarlo Precision Instrument. So we are ready to launch, and Keith, you are going to speak first. Keith, are you ready?
I'm ready, Ed. I just need to see the share my screen.
Okay, here we go. I'm sharing the screen with you now.
Okay, there we go. Show my screen, and we should be in business.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. All right, we're good?
We're good.
All right. Well, Ed, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Hello, folks. My name's Keith Cox. I'm with Synnex, and I am probably the least knowledgeable on this panel today. You know, I'm a mere rookie in all this. I've only been around, learning and around this for the last 4 years. The other folks out there that are going to talk to you, I consider true experts. And I won't get into, you know, what I call an expert or a consultant, but these are people that really, truly, you know, have been out there, done it, been there, done that. And have closets full of t-shirts. Where I'm coming from today is I'm going to introduce you to the concept of 3D scanning and talk a little bit about why 3D scanning fits into the reprographics world. as many of you may know, if I've run across, we've talked before in the past. I work pretty much a reprographics channel for Cinex, and my challenge over the last 8 to 9 years while at Cinex has been to look for other sources of revenue that reprographics firms can fit into. And I'll talk about it with that angle as we talk about what 3D scanning is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea of what the process and the technology is, how it's used, why it's important, where you fit in, and I'm going to really be scanner agnostic. I'm not really going to talk about any one particular one. We're just going to talk through the program. So having said that, and my time's clicking, here we go. Here we go. It's always something, isn't it, Ed? I'm hitting the down button and it's not moving. There we go. Okay. Well, so scanning, typically, what some folks will quote you out there and tell you that 80% of the buildings that currently exist have never been designed in CAD, and so that the as-built drawings or whatever as-built conditions that they have out there are not accurate. So scanning is used a lot in renovation. So measuring as-built conditions and getting accurate dimensions is really important. The second part that's really important is verifying the design to the build. The whole concept of the process that we still do today in the reprographics world, and that is, hey, we built something. Here's a sketch. Send it to the architect. Get an addendum. Get a new distribution revision on, and you have a new current set. So that's one of the other areas that this fits in. The third area that it fits in is, maintaining a permanent digital record. Now I'm an old 2D scanner guy. I sold my first 2D scanner back in 1989, and I fought the raster to vector wars over the years, all that in the Flintstone font. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with that. Well, today with 3D scanning, you can get a vector-based, accurate, permanent digital record of what you have, and that's really important. And lastly, where 3D scanning comes in handy is in clash detection and prevention of problems. Trying to have a foresight, looking forward to preventing an issue rather than allowing it to happen and then having to fix it later. So, what is 3D scanning? Essentially, precision measurement. A scanner shoots a laser beam out and measures its return, and it plots that in a file while you don't see it. It's a mathematical equation on an X and Y axis that gives you sometimes, depending on which scanner you're using, millimeter, tiny millimeter accuracy over some distance. And so this way you're able to very quickly determine measurements without missing anything, without having to go back, and we'll talk about that in a second. So when it does that, when the scanner shoots the laser out, it creates a point cloud. Now, we all know from the 2D scanning world that we're going to create a raster image, and that's just a series of dots that represent what the scan is. Well, to a certain extent, that's what a point cloud is, except it's vector-based information. So a point cloud is, essentially where the laser hit and measured back, and so you're able to get, based on density, a much better, accurate representation of what it is that you've actually pointed the laser at. So in the photo below is part of the Venetian out in Las Vegas, and that is a point cloud. Now that's a point cloud without pictures turned on, so you can get a pretty good image out of that, just working with basically raw data. If you turn resolution up, you can get a better image. If you turn pictures on, you get an even better image. But what happens with all that, like everything else, is you end up with larger file formats, and you have to work with those. So let's talk about how measuring or measurement is involved. Many of you may do graphics work right now, and you send somebody out to do a site survey, and you take a tape measure, and so you know how fast that can work. And so, you know, a lot of times there's, you get everything. Sometimes you're making 2 or 3 trips back to get more of the data. And so, you know, hundreds of points a day for a hand tape. A total station, you know, one of those things you see the surveyors using if you've never run across a total station before, will get you more points a day, but it's really, you know, you're pointing at something and measuring. It's very accurate in that sense, but in the other sense, you know, it's much slower than a 3D scanner because you're going point to point to point. GPS can increase that capability. You can get thousands of points a day, and you know, your accuracy may or may not be where you want it to be, but you know, you're going to be in the ballpark, and you're going to be able to work, and you'll get thousands of points a day. Well, historically, a 3D scanner will get you millions of points per second. And essentially what a 3D scanner does is spins on a 360 axis and gets a dome, a 360-degree dome at its limits around on the area surrounding the 3D scanner. So, you know, as far as the laser can shoot and get a return and measure, you're going to be able to get an idea. And so lasers, you know, laser scanning, you know, in that sense from the different manufacturers, you know, you can be as you know, handheld and as short as, you know, let's say 10 meters, or you can be on a tripod and as long as 1 kilometer in terms of the distance. So, you know, it varies, and of course, you know, the capability and the cost vary along with that too. So millions of points per second, and please ignore my little commercial. I meant to pull that out. There is a scanner today that'll do 2 million points a second. So what do we use all these for? Well, we mentioned as-built conditions to begin with. You know, a lot of times, you know, there's a renovation project that needs to get done, and the existing as-builts do not exist, or they're very inaccurate. One of my favorite stories is Hensel Phelps down in Orlando at the Universal Studios. They were contracted to redo the food court at Universal Studios. They, you know, Hensel Phelps is a design build firm, so what they did is, you know, they came in, they had to do the design for the facades and then build things out. And of course, they were on a performance-based contract. You know, to get it done, they'll get a bonus. Take too long, they lose money. And they came in, looked at the as-built. None of it was accurate. They immediately brought in a scanner, had all the measurements done in one day, and you know, needless to say, at the end of the project, they were done on time. Now, how does that fit in with reprographics? Well, you know, in a reprographics firm, you deal with as-built all day long. You know, the most current as-built are the current set, and you know, that process hasn't changed. It's just because it's become somewhat more digitized or digital than it ever was before. You know, so in the old days, you know, like I said, or in the still today, you know, a sketch is made, goes to the architect, and a revision is made, a new distribution is put out, and it may be just a few sheets today as opposed to full sets as it used to be. But in a BIM project, for example, you know, that process is a little different, and you know, they have coordination meetings where the subs are supposed to talk about what they've done, and that's supposed to be reflected in the model itself that they're using to build a 3D model. And you know, all those changes, you know, should be ongoing, where the model is almost alive, if you will. You know, there's an opportunity there to scan for as-built in on every BIM project, you know, contractually. Just as there is for that same ability to do verification, and we'll talk about that in a second. Clash detection is also one of the big areas that 3D scanners are used for. You know, basically, you know, can we scan an area and determine, you know, whether or not we're going to fit in there, or whether or not we can work in new construction around what exists without making major changes. Because of the accuracy of a 3D scanner, you get much better accuracy in your planning and what you plan to do, estimating, for example. So you're able to, you know, be more precise about the space, about the existing structure, about what you're able to fit into that area. And so, some projects right now, they're looking to go and do scanning prior to letting to bid so that they'll have more accurate data. All of this helps to contain project costs. I probably have this a little bit out of sequence because I'm going to talk about verification at the bottom of it, but verification becomes one of the other key ways of controlling project costs, because it basically is a way to measure, the actual as-built versus the model versus what the project's supposed to be. But containing project costs, basically you save money. You reduce mistakes, should be able to work on time, try to maintain your schedule, and theoretically improve the planning and design. One of the hottest areas that's kind of sweeping the country in my experience, that the other folks on the panel may have different experiences than what I'm about to tell you about, is floor flatness and floor leveling. I have the opportunity to work with a number of reprographic firms and their customers. And as we go out and work with customer repro firms that have become involved with 3D scanning and make sales calls on their companies, the whole concept of measuring the floor flatness has really become a hot topic. It goes all the way back to the beginning portion of it, and that is the first concrete pour. So from Philadelphia all the way to LA, I've run across areas where companies did not pay attention to their concrete pours, built the structure, and then found out later on that their floors are not level, and they've been forced to spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix or repair that. 3D scanning on the front end can help reduce or mitigate those costs. And the reason for that is some of the scanners today are so fast that you can do a floor flatness or you can do a scan during a concrete pour and have a floor flatness, floor leveling report out within 5 minutes of the scan, while the pour is taking place, so that the pour can be fixed before it ever sets up. That's just a really significant advantage to the concrete sub. Then, of course, on the other hand, there's some subcontractors that don't trust their concrete sub, and they're scanning as the concrete sub's working, because they don't want them to get away without making sure that their work has been done right. So the floor flatness, floor leveling is one of those areas that's become identified as an area that they can actually quantify how much money can be saved. And as we work with reprographic firms that are out promoting either 3D scanning or working closely with their general contract, their customers, the subcontractors and generals, this has become a really hot area. And then lastly, the verification process, verifying construction against design. And here we are back, kind of sort of speak into the as-built world again. The repographers have been dealing with as-built, since the beginning of time, or since you could first reproduce any kind of drawings, and that's what's really taken place there. Basically, a repro firm is able to get a contract now with a construction firm to come in and scan after the work is done or after milestones have been completed regularly on a project. And that's a nice services deal for a repro firm. So that's basically some of the uses. The workflow is fairly simple. I say it's fairly simple, but the other folks are going to tell you how complicated and how much work it is, and it really is. I come from it from a different perspective. But you have to scan, you move the scanner, you overlap as much as possible, you link your scans, and you register the images. And that sounds really simple, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind it. So just to give you an idea how that work looks, I'm sorry. So these are the basic areas. Like I say, as-built, I say that the as-built conditions are a huge thing, and they are. BIM modeling is also an opportunity for scanning. They scan in the oil and gas world, especially for piping, and we'll see something of an example on that in a second, that relates also to wastewater treatment plants. architectural documentation, especially historical objects. You can get things, really, the measurements are so tight that you can put that together, quickly, easily, saving the file, and having that for archival purposes. The construction laser scanning, I mentioned the PORS, and we also get into ground penetrating radar at some point in time, and power process and plants, and that's all going to go mixed together with oil and gas and the water treatment. Here's a couple of examples. This is the University of Maryland. They basically scanned this building. Scanners do not see through walls, so if you have a classroom building, there's lots of movement, lots of scans. The point cloud was created, cleaned up. The CAD file was basically created, in this case in Revit, and then rendered. So all the steps to a final deliverable. And Joe can probably tell you exactly how long this took, but as I recall, this contract was approximately a $50,000 contract. In terms of the hours, it worked out to be about $200 an hour to get to that point. Another example, a brewery in Tennessee where they were repurposing an existing structure to make loft apartments. So they had to come in and scan. Once again, you had the point cloud created, the whole image cleaned up and then rendered to CAD, and then ready to put in to Revit, to build out the loft apartments. The National Aquarium is another example. Here is an example of we're going to look and see if something will fit where it needs to be. They needed another water pump. This is the existing area where the water pump needed to go. They wanted to model that ahead of time, so you needed accurate dimensions. They scan, basically create the CAD, put in the next water pump and route the pipe around the existing pipe so that you can see exactly how it's going to go, how it will fit, so that they can design that and then actually put things in place. So, pretty simple in what the purposes are for. But there's value all across the scanning spectrum. From conceptual condition surveys, which we just looked at with the piping and the pumping, to design. Basically you're going to do a renovation, so you want to attach to the as-built, make sure that you have everything correct, and validate the concept. The verification process, eliminating change orders and reducing delays and costs. If you keep the subs honest and do verifications, at each milestone, those are service opportunities for the reprographics provider to maintain a position in the as-built chain. And then lastly, many of you may already have closeout programs or some form of closeout that you work with your customer on, and 3D scans are fitting nicely into closeout and facilities management. That is the owner's manual of the building and how to run it and how everything is put together. One of the things I didn't mention there is in what we're starting to see a lot more of. It's something that's built is you do a 3D scan of the existing area before the skins are put on, the walls are put on, so that you can see the wiring, the plumbing, and all of that. And then you can geotag, that is, maybe take a photo, put it actually into the scan, add some text to it, and give instructions as to, well, that's the main electrical line, or this is the sewage plumbing here, or just enough to note what exactly is going on in that particular image, so that if something happens within that room or that area afterwards, nobody's having to play whack-a-mole and try to figure out where the services are. They'll have fairly exact detailed locations of where to look for problems. So the facilities management thing is a big deal as well. So as Ed mentioned, we're doing a webinar, or actually a seminar, at the DoubleTree Market Center on October 23rd, in conjunction with all of the meetings that are taking place. So learn more about 3D scanning and the business of 3D scanning. It'll be at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're going to run probably somewhere between 12 and 1. And like I said, at the DoubleTree. So if you're interested in learning more about 3D scanning or the business of it, please contact me. We've got room for about 30 folks there. We're not filled yet, but there's people coming in and registering every day. And you can register by just sending me an email, keithc@cinex.com. And if you want, send me an email and say you want this flyer because you want to talk about it to somebody else in your organization, and I'll send it out to you. And with that, I'm probably over my time a little bit, but thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, Ed. And if I can help any of y'all, please contact me.
Great. Thank you very much, Keith. Excellent overview there. Lots of info to digest. Let's move on now to Joe Nicoli. Joe, I'm going to change the screen to you here.
Okay. Let me get this. All right. Is that?
Okay. Yep, there we go. Great.
Page of that? Or... Okay. I am Joe Nicoli. I'm the manager of AEC services for Direct Dimensions. So I'm going to run you through a little bit. We're going to overlap a bit with what Keith talked about. I'm going to show you a few case studies, and then I'm going to talk about kind of where we fit in Cinex in terms of working with reprographics firms and resellers. So hopefully, maybe I'll burn through this and try and make up a little bit of time here. So, as I said, we're at Direct Dimensions, founded in 1995. There's 25, maybe up to 30 of us now. We've done thousands of projects, and we're not just in the AEC space. We're doing historical preservation, we do industrial stuff, we do a lot of military applications, we do medical. We just finished scanning all of the props, sets, vehicles, and actors for the last Avengers movie. Hollywood's a big space for us, and they are scanning everything for those movies. It turns out Robert Downey Jr. cannot fly. So we got people trained across all different industries. That's a question that we get asked a lot is, who in your firm do you send out to do this work? And the scanners have gotten very user-friendly. The best background you can have is knowing how to run a computer, honestly. But we have engineers, we have designers, we have artists. My background is actually archaeology, and I came into this from a scanning historic sites perspective. I've been doing this almost 20 years now. As Keith said, this is the scanning process. So you're capturing millions of individual points, and the resolutions and accuracies you need are going to vary. We do everything from an open pit mine to literally capturing fingerprints. It can all be done with laser scanning. Here's a little bit of a busy graphic, but this is what we're talking about. So you go out and you scan your building, and then you get the point cloud, and then these are all of the different things that you go to from there. And I'll try and zoom through a case study for a few of these. And as you can see, it gets harder the more involved you get in these. There's just a quick side-by-side. It's a bank building in DC. So there's the picture of it, and there's the color scan, and those are just millions of individual points in the scan. And there's the Revit that we derive from it. So, and I guess maybe that's a point I should make right now, is that we're kind of involved at all levels of this. We'll go out and do the scanning in the field, and we have clients that will just take that point cloud data. And you'll see this as you go out and talk to these AEC firms. They're at all different levels of sophistication when it comes to this. We have clients that'll just take the point cloud, they say thank you, and then they go and do all the modeling themselves. We have clients where we have to do all the modeling. We have clients where we're doing the modeling and the drawing, and we're involved in all different levels. So. The case one, this is a real quick one. This is just the point cloud. So they're redoing the signage in the fascia of this strip mall. So the inspector happened to be driving by, said, hey, you've got scaffolding too close to those power lines. Well, he just made that judgment call and shut down the site. So how far were they away, really? Well, we ran out. This took maybe 2 hours. We ran out there from our office. I should mention that too. Our home office is in Baltimore. I'm personally in Olympia, Washington. We have people in New York and people in Detroit now, I believe. We sent someone out. This is outside of DC, so we just sent someone out there. They were on site in an hour. They took these measurements, and really quickly they're able to turn around and get all of these distances, all of these offsets, and the job site's back up and running. Keith mentioned that something like 80%, I'd say it's probably higher than 80%, of buildings, there's no design in the computer for it. So how do you go about getting estimates for things? Especially, no drawing is good after the building's been built. You're almost always working off of the drawings that were created for the construction of that building. So this one, they needed 2D drawings so they could go out and get a cladding estimate. So went out and scanned it. This was about 30 scans. This took, a couple hours on site. We take the point cloud and then we drop it in the computer and we extract the 2D drawings. And then this 2D drawings went out to all of their bids and they got a real accurate bid. Keith mentioned this one. I was actually on this one. This was a cool project. This was an old historic brewery in Memphis that was being turned into loft apartments, retail space, and a farm-to-table restaurant. I swear to you, I have done at least a half a dozen farm-to-table restaurants. Those old bus barns and warehouses and refrigerator factories that are being turned into restaurants, well, they all need to be scanned because they're not up to standards to put in a restaurant. The one thing I will say about this one is if you can look at that picture in the upper right, one of the really big things that they were looking for was this is actually 3 different buildings. And so they needed to know the relationships of the floors between those buildings. So they were going to bulldoze that, they were going to cut holes in all of these walls to make this a single building. I think as it was right now, there was one hole that had been sledgehammered through between 2 of the buildings, and that was the only connection they had. There's the route. Case 4. This is an important one. I have this graphic in every talk that I give, no matter who I'm talking to. So on a typical project, rework accounts for 12 to 15% of the cost of construction. You can all do the math on that. A laser scan and the ability to catch a conflict before they happen can reduce that rework to 1 to 3%. So this is saving people money. This is saving lots of money. And this is a white paper that's out there. Now, it's put out by Autodesk and one of the scanner manufacturers, so it's a little self-serving. But I still think it's a great thing to mention whenever you're trying to talk about this work. So this is a specific case where the warehouse was designed based on the old plans, which, that's what the owner gave to the architect. And they said, go ahead and do it. So the contractor hired us to go out and verify whether or not that was accurate. And what we found was that right there at that arrow, it was about a foot off. So imagine cutting your steel and having it delivered to the site only to realize that you were about a foot short. Now, we tried to lay this out any number of different ways. We pulled the point cloud this way and that way, but it was always off. Somewhere, your short sheet in the bed. Somewhere you were going to be off. It was off in the horizontal and in the vertical. That's a big one. Keith mentioned this as well. Floor flatness. We do this a lot. This is another one in DC, the specific case. This was an old commercial building that was going to be turned into a residential space. And they had different tolerances for the floor flatness, I believe, because they wanted to have those big swinging, those big rolling barn doors on it. So they needed some pretty serious floor flatness specs to be hit. So went down there. This took 2 of us a morning, and we scanned all of this. And this was after everything had been stripped out. So, and then we went on site and we marked an X. So this was, not only were we getting the floor flatness, but we were leaving behind our benchmark so that the people that were coming in and doing cut and fill had a benchmark to work off of. And that's what that looks like. So that's the floor there, and what we call a heat map on the right that shows the high and low spots. And if you look at it, it pretty well makes sense. So these white spots, this is where the point cloud is there's no points because those are the columns. So in the middle of all these bays is where you're seeing the low spots. And that's from just slump, years of concrete being hung basically by those columns. Mechanical space. So Keith explained this better than I can with these simple shots, but I'll just add that this is a great way to do clash prevention. Whether it's new build or whether you're adding systems, to be able to go in and rerun pipe routes, electrical routes, whatever, around the existing. One of the first uses of this laser scanning was actually on oil platforms. They were, by their very nature, they're always jerry-rigged. You get a problem out on you don't have time to go back to the office when you're out on an oil platform. You just got to run pipes or you need to run pipes. So when they do major overhauls, this was the quickest way to get an existing as-built. All right. How can you, well, this is you supposed to be all of your clients, I would say. The owners have reduced change orders. The architects have every measurement right there at the computer, their fingertips. The contractors have the existing conditions that they can make these construction decisions based on. The engineers can avoid conflicts. And the facilities managers, they can look at their space holistically all at once. You know, if you have 18 units that are occupied by different tenants, you can just pull back and look at different configurations of the spaces. Frequently asked questions. Do not need light to scan. Do not need targets to scan. That one comes up a lot. We do use targets when we're tying into survey control systems. How does the software create the Revit? Okay, so I didn't get into this much, and this is obviously an important point. Right now, there are softwares out there that will take this point cloud and turn it into vector stuff. It'll turn it into planes and walls and pipes. The softwares are not really up to snuff. We do have a few clients that are starting to use them, and we try them out about once a year just to see if they're really working for us. Scanner to detect materials. Nope. Larger the files. This one, the files are starting to get larger than this. Keith mentioned that RTC. That thing scanning 2 million points a second. It's starting to create some pretty good sized files. The laser's eye safe. And this is about, each scan can take, well, this says as little. Now, another thing about the RTC, it's about 30 seconds. So we don't shut down sites when we're doing something. Keith showed you that University of Maryland, it was essentially offices that we did. And we didn't need to shut down the site for that. We said, hey, we're going to be in your office for a minute to take some measurements. You can step out of your office, you can sit at your desk. We're just going to be here for a minute, and then we're going to be on our way. And this is how it's done now. You don't need to clear the site for it. We just finished scanning all of the Natural History Museum down in DC. We were on site for 6 weeks. We took, I don't even know the total. It's 8,000 to 10,000 scans, and we didn't shut down for anything. So, how to engage us for that? Okay, so one 10-minute phone call. What we usually like to see is existing condition. Any photographs of the existing conditions, anything you have, even if it's just schematic, the square footage, how many floors are on it, you know, what areas are of interest, what areas are not of interest. Okay, and then I threw this one in here as well. This is how DDI can help resellers and reprographics firms. So we have been partnered, I guess, with Synnex for, let's say, like 3 years now. And we've been working with Keith and talking to his clients. And these are some of the services that we've actually offered and done for reprographics firms. In-house webinars. So if any of you want a more detailed discussion, and I'm talking about more of a sales talk from a salesman. I'm pinch hitting today for our head sales guy. And he can get on a webinar with your guys' staff and talk about how we talk to clients about getting this service done. We can do client webinars. I do lunch and learns all the time. Go out and talk to architectural groups, engineering groups, whoever. We can get on the phone and talk to your clients. We do on-site training. We've had people, So if you buy a scanner and you want to learn how to get it out in the field and how to take scans and where to set up the scanner when you're in the field, we have people come out on our jobs and do work with us. Promotional images, you saw Keith stole some of my images there, so we can make some of that stuff available. Quoting material I've got, I have that slide in here. We have an intake sheet for talking to clients about what they would like to get in their job. A pilot project, if you have a client that is looking to do laser scanning, but you don't want to jump in with both feet, we can be your scanners for that project. If you get a big project that you need some help with, we can do that. We can do post-processing. Subcontracting, we've turned around and had repro firms do scanning for us. So if we didn't want to send a guy out to a site, it was a small job, we just contacted the repro firm and they sent their guy out and scanned. And then left field jobs. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we scan everything. Statues, sculptures, bridges, cars, boats, you name it. We've scanned everything. So if you get a client that says, hey, I need to scan this quarter scale model to put it into a Revit model. So we've scanned stuff like that. I was in Orlando years ago to scan the volcano that's now part of Universal's volcano theme park when it was just a clay model in a warehouse. And there is our intake sheet. And this is pretty straightforward. This is just kind of a bunch of check boxes that allow you to ask the right questions of your clients in terms of getting a job. I think I will end there, which is a little anticlimactic, but I should have my email up there, which I don't, but Keith can get a hold of you, or I will get my information to Ed. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me.
Great. Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate that. You've offered also some great info. Joe, go ahead and use the little chat thing to send your email out to everybody if you'd like. Now I'm going to switch the screen over to Nina and Lucas.
All right, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you, and I just switched the screen over.
All right, let me do this. And let's see if it actually works. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Let me minimize these things here. All right. So thanks for everybody that's over here today in the, well, I guess it's the morning, depending on which time zone you're in. My name is Lucas Durudia. I'm here with Nina DiCarlo. We're running, this little show. Hold on, I got to go to the next slide here. We'll be talking about very similar stuff that actually Joe and Keith spoke about. We are going to be talking about how our company kind of approached it from the same vantage point as you guys. We started our operation in like 1988. Where we were more of a what?
Yeah, so we started out as a survey company initially, and then we grew into reprographics, and then about 2012, we actually grew into 3D scanning. So it was more of a growth, not a jump for us to get into 3D scanning. So what we actually do as a company, just really quick to review, is we do print solutions. So we're actually large format Canon, HP, OSE, and KIP dealers. We also have a reprographic house here. We do UAV systems. So we actually pull together data with survey equipment, UAV data, as well as 3D scanning, and we pull it all together. And then we do 3D scanning. So we do the sales. We are Faro dealers. So we sell the Faro 3D laser scanners. We also rent the scanners, and we do the training and the technical support on the scanners. So, and we also do surveying technology. So we are TopCon survey dealers as well. So through the years, we have kind of grown, and I'm kind of, as we go into this a little bit, I'm going to let Lucas kind of do a really quick technology end of it. And then we'll kind of get into what you need to do as a reprographer to get into this business. So I'm going to let him do it really. I know we don't have much time.
From Keith, I'll jump into this really quickly. From Keith, we know that you can get into, the actual hardware and the software part of laser scanning. From Joe, we know that there's a need for an actual, service-based application and delivering some products to your actual customers, which might be the services and might be the actual software. But what I want to hit on is the fact that when we're talking laser scanning, you're always going to be talking about trying to capture something in these 3 dimensions, as you see from X, Y, Z, of course, as Keith mentioned, the actual point cloud. But where we come into play as far as DiCarlo Precision is, we came into this world from a different vantage point. It wasn't necessarily a repro house. It was more of a geopositioning company already. We were selling total stations. We were selling robotic instruments. We were selling GPS instruments to land surveyors. So there's a little bit of a combination of when you're working with a laser scanner to kind of understand the 3-dimensional space that you're capturing from that vantage point too. Meaning, if you already have a total station and GPS or a robotic instrumentation, how do you actually combine these together so that they all correlate into the same coordinate system? So what we do is we take the actual laser scanner, just like you see on the picture over here, and combine it with maybe even aerial imagery, aerial photography, also aerial LiDAR, combine it with also stationary scanners, which you see on the 3rd picture over there on a little tripod, and everything merges into one project, which then generates an XYZ file. That XYZ file, being the point cloud, then doesn't just give you the as-built conditions of something arbitrarily in the middle of nowhere, but it is also then correlated to the ground coordinate system, meaning you know exactly down to, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 hundredths of a foot accuracy where that data was captured, how it was captured, and how it correlates to the true world coordinates. The last little arm that you see over there, that is a Faro arm that allows you to do almost, I want to call it, micrometers, or even almost down to nanometer accurate scans, which we typically don't do. I know Joe Nicoli and his company, Direct Dimensions, do a little bit of or maybe a lot of this thing where they actually do, recording of these small objects for maybe reverse engineering also. We haven't dabbled into that, but it's, again, same kind of concept as with the terrestrial laser scanners. It's just on a much actual smaller scale. Now let's do this. What have we gotten into as far as opportunities for our business? Again, being a repro house and having had some exposure to, geopositioning, the geopositioning industry, we weren't really interested, or at least had the opportunity to go into these different industry fields. So we've just based with the fact that we have access to laser scanners, we are able to approach aerospace industry. We've done some work with a medical and even, interestingly enough, the dental field. Crash and crime is big in laser scanners too, because obviously, it creates an as-built condition of a crash or an accident scene. Geospatial is historically what we've been in, so that was not that new to us. Heritage preservation is something that Joe mentioned again in the previous presentation, is something that we weren't involved in before, but because of, again, the exposure with 3D scanners, we got into really quickly. Civil engineering, just for maybe critical infrastructure stuff, like you see the bridge, was something that land surveyors typically get into with very isolated measurements and GPS and total stations, but utilizing a laser scanner, not only can they see, just like we already mentioned, clash detection and some deviation information, but you can see your as-built conditions compared to the model that was actually there. We are working with a lot of architects, which we were before as a repro house, so that wasn't that new. But again, we're delivering a different I guess, product to them instead of, printed on a paper. We're working with a 3D company that can print their plans and the actual scans onto a hologram, for example, creating those deliverables for the architects, for their clients too. As far as industrial inspection, we already saw a couple of those examples with Keith and Joe, so I'm not going to talk about that. But it really opened up our business model and getting into the doors of new customers. Again, at this point, it was not the simplest thing to actually, get into, just because of the fact that we had to figure out a lot of what kind of hardware, what kind of software we're going to be actually running. And that's on my next slide that we're actually going to start talking about. We had the opportunity to work with a lot of these hardware manufacturers. So we had to make a decision on the laser scanner. We ended up going with a Faro manufacturer for the laser scanners. We have dabbled into many of the other different manufacturers too, but we are mainly a Faro service, I guess, provider. We do sell these units, but we also rent these units, and we actually do a lot of training and support on them too. So we're trying to not just support one instrument and just the sale of it, but just like Joe mentioned, do a little bit of post-sale maybe support, do a lot of training, and just getting guys who have never done something like this into being maybe comfortable with running it. Obviously, you see that there's other companies. We're also involved a little bit with Trimble. We've done work with Leica. We are a Topcon house also. Even though their laser scanner is not something that we've sold many units of, we're mostly focusing on their total stations and GPS instruments. But again, it is one of the manufacturers that we're kind of involved with. Surfacer and StoneX are just another couple of different manufacturers that you will be running into, as far as if you're interested into actually selling them. If we talk about software will be something that you'll have to look into, just because of the fact that software is necessary to be able to merge all of those different data sources together. Meaning, if you have that total station, if you have that laser scanner, and you have that GPS, you need to be able to merge all of these together into one homogeneous kind of, I guess, a data project or something. For that, we typically, again, use Faro, or we use the Autodesk Recap, which is in the middle over there. Bentley, if you're into that kind of ecosystem, then that would be maybe MicroStation or Point Tools. It still does the same thing, but again, it just is a different way of visualizing the data. Leica with its Cyclone packages, and then the Trimble RealWorks. These are all softwares that would allow you to do everything that we do, except from a different vantage point as far as what manufacturer you're actually going into. Synex at the very bottom has definitely helped us out with Keith getting into software and hardware too. So they're an awesome, I guess, strategic partner to actually have. Get the hardware, get the software from, and then we kind of take it to the next level for that actual training. There's a couple of other companies that we deal with at the bottom over here, mostly in, I guess, California, but that tells you that we're not limited to the field of work that, would be in the past. Our location being on the East Coast over here, near Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., but we actually operate throughout the United States. We have also gotten into stocking and actually selling targets and accessories that come hand in hand with, I guess, selling and renting the GPSs and the total stations, and in this case, our scanners. Targets not as necessary as they were in the past, but because we do all of those combinations of data collection packages where you have the GPS and the total station combined with the scanner, you would definitely need to have some kind of targets that will be common between one data set and the laser scan data set to actually bring them together. So they're still relevant, but if you're really not into that kind of thing, they are not as necessary as they were in the past. Tripods and other odds and ends are another thing that we actually carry.
Really quick, I know we don't have much time, so I'm going to kind of blow through the rest of it. So 3D laser scanning in general, we chose Faro and to work with Faro, and we have been very grateful, and we love dealing with Faro because of the fact that they aren't pigeonholing. You can use other softwares, you can use different hardwares to go into their softwares, and it's really been a great tool for us to figure out how to work all these different equipments and our customers being able to choose the right tool for the right job. We do not do service work. We started to at one point, but we chose not to anymore because of the fact that we were really going into our customers, and our goal is to sell and rent equipment and train customers on equipment so they grow their businesses. So we really we focus on supporting them. So when we have customers call us asking for service work to be done, we actually have a customer base that we deal with and that we know are incredible at what they do, and we actually do introductions to those customers together so they can start working together. And a lot of our customers end up buying more equipment because of the fact of these introductions that we do. The rentals and the training is really important for us, and we make sure that your teams are running and they are constantly running. One of our goals is, if you purchase a warranty with us, we actually, if a unit goes down, we guarantee you we will get you another unit. And that's what we do with our equipment to make sure these things happen. And you keep running, but your team also is working constantly. So we kind of try to keep you busy with some work. To go to the next slide.
We spoke about the actual market.
Yeah, the market itself, but the capital investment for you as a repro house, choosing the right vendor, the right equipment, making sure that you get that support, you're able to handle those accessories, and find a good line of accessories, because different equipment is different, it requires different accessories. There's no joke here with how much data you are collecting. You're collecting millions of points, you're collecting large files, and pulling all that data together. So, you need to make sure you have the right computers, you need to make sure you have the right storage. Storage is incredibly important for that. And personnel and training, and I don't know if you guys are running into the same thing that our customers are running into, but it's finding qualified people out there to actually run the equipment and process the data, and
trust them with the data.
Yeah, and to trust them with that data. So there's many different things you kind of need to look at for that. Make sure you have your best practices, your quotation estimation, your contracts. If you decide to do the work yourself or just be a rental, and we actually have customers who use us as they rent through us for their customers. So there's many different ways around this, and we would be more than happy to do business with you and help you grow your business in that way. Or, if you decide that you want to sell equipment, we can help you in that way as well. But risk mitigation, marketing, service repair and technical support plans, I can't tell you enough how important training is. I know I keep going to that, but to make sure that your employees or your customers' employees are trained appropriately, that is the most important. You already have the customer base. You have that AEC customer base in your system. And that makes this, it's a benefit, but it could also make this very easy transition, a very easy transition to the next step. It's just making sure you understand what you're actually getting into. But we do provide training. We have a training class here.
It happens to be awfully soon.
Yeah, it's next week.
This was just unannounced. Well, it's announced to our customers, but we weren't sure that anybody would be able to actually make it to the class. But if anybody is interested, we actually have one in here in Salisbury, Maryland, next week that kind of gets you from not knowing anything about scanning into knowing how to combine it with all the other traditional, maybe survey and data collection techniques, even with drone work, even when you're talking about, photogrammetry, when you're flying it with a drone or octocopter or a fixed wing instrument. It's a 2-day class, and we have these classes. It's not, once in a blue moon thing. It's actually, we have these classes typically every 2 months. Occasionally, it's a little bit more frequently, but every 2 months is typically how we try to keep these. We have a classroom in Salisbury, Maryland, where we can seat, I don't know, 16, 15, maybe even 20 people, sit down, and everybody gets their hand on the actual scanner, can take it into the field outside, see what the data looks like, how it combines into a project, and essentially get the feel for, how this is done. And then there's also going to be classes which are going to build on top of this thing. So we've developed a little bit of a, kind of a course for guys who have never done it, to get into laser scanning and get a feel for it, without having to, spend the money and having to, try to and figure it out with the help of manufacturers who frequently are not available to do the training for you. I don't know.
Yeah, Ed.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
We're looking at the time here, so.
Yeah, Nina and Lucas, perfect timing there. I appreciate that you were able to squeeze all that information in. So attendees, I just want to remind you, if you have questions, go ahead and send them. We're out of time, but we will make sure that you attach your name to your question, and we will email you a reply from the speakers. Just in summary, I think you all understand that either of these three firms can help you get into 3D scanning as a business, and can point you in the right direction of training, and or point you in the direction of finding a provider who can do the work for you as you get into the business. So you don't need to do that first job yourself. You can find, through these three people who spoke today, these four people, you can find someone who can get it started for you, and then as that business grows for you, can help you learn and train you and sell you the equipment, etc. So it is an opportunity for reprographics firms, and I hope that everyone perceives that. So thank you very much. This webinar will be posted on the APDSP website, so you can watch it again and dive more into it. And when I post it, I will send you all an email so you know it's posted, and I'll include the contact information for today's speakers and their websites, so you can do that kind of investigation and contact there yourselves. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and thank you very much to the speakers today. You've provided great value to our members, and I thank you. And with that, this webinar has concluded. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks.